Hello, you wonderful mutants. Greetings again from the land of the midnight sun. This is Joel Clark, lead designer of Lone Wolf Fist, and forthcoming lead designer of All Above Heaven. And maybe some other secret fun projects that are in the works, too. So I just got off a very productive meeting, a video meeting with my line editor, David Ramirez, about the future of Lone Wolf Fist as we march forward and of the whole Tiancheng product line. And it looks like we actually have a lot of stuff lined up after this one. Because of the success of the Kickstarter, once we actually get this first core one completed, we've got a few modules we're interested in making, including a very interesting one that's currently going by the working title of Burning Cities, which is kind of based on a Hong Kong style of wuxia movies, or not really wuxia movies, but like the martial arts movies that were based in modern Hong Kong. That David's been very interested to go in. It's a little lower on the power curve, but it has different advancement mechanisms and a bunch of nifty stuff that David thought up. So plenty of goodies in that one. In addition to that, we broached on All Above Heaven. What we're going to do with the other remaining parts of that, as you guys all know, you can get the very first part, or actual very first product was an All Above Heaven product. It was, what was it called? Can't remember now. And anyway, the point of it was an introduction module. It was meant to be in 4 parts. It was meant to show the scale and scope and such like of the game, but we stalled out on the second part because I started getting involved in Lone Wolf Fist, and I realized that I really needed to flesh out some of the ideas that I had and make them a lot more concrete and gameable before we move forward with that bigger scope project. And I'm glad I did, because until last month, I didn't know exactly how some of the ideas that I have were going to transpire. Like the domain management stuff, I was like, well, I know I want resources in this. I don't know how I want them to manifest. Until the month before that, I didn't know exactly how I was going to make the different kinds of content work together. That all came together in the GM chapter, so it was a really good journey to go on this way. Definitely the longer route, but it's made a much more robust and playable game. Anyway, No Sleep November is over, so I got a nice night's sleep last night for the first time in a month. I really wound up burning the candle at both ends in the Armory chapter, which I'm glad I did. I actually haven't gotten to the magic items part yet. I did some initial notes and sketched those out, and those are pretty basic, and I'm sure I'll flesh those out and make them insufferably specific and irritating eventually. But as for right now, I'm sticking with the vehicles because I really liked the approach I wound up taking. There's a multifaceted element to vehicles that makes them more complex than you'd think I would design. I think that when you adopt a system like Legends of the Woolen, with its sort of top-down and abstracted way of doing things, the strength of that system is that it feels comprehensive. You know, you roll your dice, you set out all your actions, and all the actions you can pour meaning into, and the abstraction of the numbers is kind of just there to give you an idea of the relative power of those actions. That's a really cool, comprehensive core system for a game, but whenever it hits something that it's not designed for, it struggles. For example, a thing, if you're going to add vehicles to that, or even monsters too, but vehicles, the thing I've struggled with that is that the physicality of vehicles is not will or achievement based. And by that I mean that dice pool is meant to represent a person whose skill barely keeps up with the fire in their soul. And so we can kind of imagine putting more effort into a given thing and then sort of auto-correcting it as it transpires and changes in the world with our fantastic human brains, and especially if you add whatever magic kung fu that these guys have on top of that. You know, you can use that all as a sort of spackle for believability. So yeah, of course you can't punch through a mountain just because you really, really need to. But I mean, I rolled a freaking a set of 5, and then I added 4 ranks to it. Like, of course I can punch through a mountain. Fuck that mountain. Vehicles don't have that, though. Vehicles, it's inappropriate to give them something like that effort pool of dice. They don't really meaningfully make attacks. They are either accelerating or decelerating. They are either turning or they're using a weapon system. They have these compartmentalized elements to them. And it doesn't make sense to represent them with that same abstraction. So I've had to use a different set of abstractions to put them together. And that's made some really interesting stuff. Because what you have now is effectively a game that is sort of adjacent to that resolution mechanism that has to interact with it. And that's been fascinating. It's actually been interesting to put it together. It's made me think very critically about like what I'm doing with this game in general, and the role of things like vehicles in the game. They're meant for transport. They're meant as weapons platforms. They're meant to relocate things like armies and supplies. And they are also a sort of mini game of resources. This is why I think resource tracking is so important, especially in a post-apocalyptic world. It might not be so much when we get to All Above Heaven. I might get to the point where I'm like, okay, if you're operating at this tier, it's all magic, and it's not really about counting resources anymore. It's more about like tactics beyond those kind of resource constraints. Right now, though, how far your tank can drive should be a significant consideration, and therefore its fuel consumption and fuel capacity have to be accounted for. Because that sort of creates scenes, you know? The end of the... which Mad Max movie is that? It's not Beyond Thunderdome, it's the other one. For some reason, I only think of Beyond. I can't get Beyond Thunderdome in my head. Is it the Road Warrior? It might be the Road Warrior, where they think of putting all the gas into their cars instead of the giant tanker trunk and driving it away. That's a scene that's created because they had constraints. They had to think creatively and strategically to get around them. And that's something I want in this game. Same thing with the ammo capacity. How many big shots does your tank have? The tank's big shots matter, you know. The big booms are huge, and they can kill really powerful characters in a single go, or smash armies, or alter the landscape, or look at buildings. But how many of those tank shells can you have? How many do you have when you steal the tank from the yahoos that are inside of it? All important considerations. What's the protection of a person inside of a tank versus what is the difficulty of breaking through the armor of the tank with an attack versus what's the difficulty of picking up a tank and throwing it into the horizon? If those things aren't purely comparable, there becomes a one true option. Like, if the amount of force you need to generate in an attack is as difficult to achieve in the system in terms of the rarity of getting a set like that and the expense of boosting it to that point, as it is just throw the tank, you have one option that's clearly better. Just throw the damn tank. And so that's a consideration. Do I... Because physics actually is kind of trending towards that. Do I actually want that to be the case in this game? Or do I want to do something a little bit different with it? So it's been a fascinating chapter. And I'm glad that I decided to stop and get stuck in and do the research. Because now I can put vehicles in a lot of situations and they'll answer questions for the GM. Like, okay, they want to use their tank to pull this trap door open. They're lashing it there. How do they do that? Well, the pulling strength of the tank will give you that. They're going to use this transport ship and fill it with bombs and run it to the middle of the city. How fast can they get there? You know, if the one saboteur is trying to stop them, can he do it? All right, here's the acceleration. Here's its capacity for that. Here's the explosive yield of those explosives. You know, here's how much you can get out of them when you lash them all together. These are questions you need to be able to answer with an equipment chapter because they're giving the players toys to use creatively, and toys come with both benefits and restraints. And when you make robust rules, you make something that functions in a way where those are clear to players and you can use them in a lot of situations, and they play intuitively and they kind of infer and create their own scenes. That's what I always strive for when it comes to game design, is something that's robust, something that can work in a way that's intuitive. So I'm really, and flexibly, that flexibility is so important. Anyway, I'm almost at 10 minutes here. I got lost in the weeds a little bit. So still working on the vehicles chapter. We have domains done, got that done early last month. Vehicles was in the end of last month. We're going to finish that up. I'm going to give myself 2 more minutes here. I'm going to go to 12 minutes this time. So getting off there. We're going to try to finish that up. if not this week, then next. I got a little cocky with it, and I think that getting cocky got me to drive right into it and start trying to look at comparative engine strength and things like that. And I'm actually reasonably happy with the where I set my rocks down as far as like, okay, here is what 1 means in terms of fuel consumption, here is what 7 means, etc., all the way up to 14. And if you look at the work in progress chapter of that, you'll see where there's blank places that just need the research to fill them in. I'm really happy with how nice and robust that came out. I should probably write down that thing about explosive yields and things like that. I may have to go back into all these chapters once I think of more crazy shit that players might pull. Anyway, because I was just thinking about, like, what is the explosive yield of a nuclear reactor if you just sabotage it? And that might be a question that's too detailed to need to answer outside of an abstraction. Like, you know what? If it melts down, it's a rank 12, moving on. Like, that actually works. You know, when you really think about it, that basically works. But it might be nice to be able to have a scale of disasters again. I might have to go back to the disasters chapter, actually, and just make that a little more fleshed out. One of the benefits and drawbacks of continuing to go forward instead of continuing to redesign and rewrite is that once you set something down, like the disaster rules that I have, and later on you're to the point where you've refined your thinking and you've made more stuff, you can look back on those rules and be like, ooh, those creak. Those creak. I gotta fix those up. I gotta clean those up. And I will. I'm gonna have to. It's gonna be the tech edit. But that way I get the entire draft done, and then the whole tech edit benefits from the final draft being done. And that tech edit might get a little sloshy, but we'll see. Anyway, doing that. Bestiary is after that. Hopefully get that knocked out this month as well. So get ready for those. I've also got an art gallery that I wanted to give to all of you guys. It's all the art that we have so far. It's going to make its way into the book. So, again, thank you all so much. This is my 12 minutes, so I'm signing off.